What's up guys, Block FPL here and welcome back to another Fantasy Premier League video on my channel. Today, let's talk about Game Week 31. I think there's multiple defenses that look good for the next 2 weeks at least, so we'll definitely get into that. But first, let's talk about Game Week 30. 52 points, it was actually pretty disappointing. Only Kane, Salah, and Fernandez did something. Obviously, Kane captain basically made the whole week, but still a red arrow with 52 points. All the Man City players stayed on the bench. And Calvert-Lewin, Bamford, Loughton, Target, all these players I expected to have a decent chance to do something. None of them did anything, but that's the way it is a lot of times. Still not a terrible score, but we move on. This week, this is how I'm looking at the moment. I've made one transfer, and that's Dallas to Semedo. Now, Dallas does have some good fixtures, but they're kind of in the distant future. And given the fact that I have a lot of Man City players, I think it fits my team best to get some more depth in here because these Man City players need to be rotated a little bit. I don't want to deal with Leeds' tough fixtures here. Over the next 3 especially, and even 34 and 35, I could see Brighton and Tottenham maybe, at least scoring 1 on them. So, but for the last 3, I would expect for my team to have Dallas back in instead of the likes of Cancelo and maybe Stones. But this is how the team looks at the moment. I brought in Semedo and I started him over Bamford. Again, Bamford may well come in. I think that at least 1 or 2 of the Man City players will start, but there's a decent chance that Bamford will be subbed in. It's against Man City, so it's not the best fixture, but I don't really expect too much from him. One thing that I will say is that I've thought pretty hard about making other transfers as well, especially with the defense. Cancelo and Stones being rotation risks. Target, let's take a look at his fixtures real quick. They're just not great, so I could get rid of him pretty soon as well. And there's a lot of options here, and this is where I'm going to talk about. I think now would be a decent chance, especially if you're going to try to make up some rank. A lot of you are in this situation where maybe in the mini league, you kind of want to take a risk and try to catch up on some people. I think it's a good time to double up on certain defenses. Team number 1 is Wolves. Now, Wolves in the next 2, they play Fulham, Sheffield United, then they play Burnley, West Brom, Brighton. It's very good, right? Until the final 3, they're simply great fixtures. And Wolves have been pretty okay defensively as of recently, so they conceded 2 to West Ham. West Ham have been very good, though. They conceded 1 to Liverpool, 0 to Villa, 1 to Man City, 1 to Newcastle, 0 to Leeds. So they're not conceding a lot of goals. They only conceded multiple goals to Man City and West Ham, who have been very good. But they're kind of doing what you would expect from them in every game, like, conceding 1 to Newcastle, conceding none to Leeds. These are very predictable scores, as well as conceding to the big teams. So when we get into these easy fixtures, I'm not going to say that they're guaranteed to keep 4 clean sheets in a row, but I would expect 2 clean sheets in the next 4. I think that's pretty reasonable, and they've been performing at a reasonable pace, given their quality. So I would expect, in this next 4, I would say 2 clean sheets, and with somebody like Semedo, maybe an assist. He's only got 2 on the season, though, so I'm not too confident in that. The reason I went with Semedo is because he does just get higher up the field and during open play, so he does have a little bit more creative potential. I think there's been times in the past where he's been a little bit unlucky not to get a goal, but I could completely understand going with Cody as well. He's cheaper, and he has sort of established himself as a threat from corners. So I think Cody's a great option. And that's the first defense I want to talk about. I think they're a pretty safe pick for the next 4 fixtures. One thing I have thought about, I could simply do Loughton to Cody this week as a -4. I think that would be decent. Not Loughton, Target to Cody. That would give me 0.1 as well. The reason I'm not doing this is because I feel like my team at the moment has pretty good fixtures to where that's not necessary. Now, of course, a lot of that depends on the Man City rotation. But given that all these people play, the only ones with tough fixtures, I would say, are these premiums, the real heavy-hitting players of Kane, Son, and Bruno. So I'm not going to bench them anyway. And then my sort of cheaper guys have good fixtures. So no real reason to worry about a -4 this week, I don't think. Now, the second defense I want to talk about is Liverpool. Now, there's huge price differences in the Liverpool defenders, right? You can go for the most expensive in the entire game of Trent and Robertson, Or you can go where I would probably go at the moment, and that is Phillips or Kabak. I like Phillips. He's $4 million. So if this guy is like your 5th best defender, you may be okay if he ever does get rotated. I think at the moment, Klopp is trying to sort of establish a solid back four that doesn't change week to week. So I think Phillips is actually going to start for the rest of the season as long as he doesn't put in too poor performances. And of course, they have decent fixtures. They're not quite as good as Wolves right away, but considering he's $4 million, this could be the kind of guy that you bring in so that you can make a move like, I don't know, maybe getting Lingard instead of a cheap midfielder. The reason I say that is because that's probably what I'm going to do next week. We can see Cancelo here. I'll probably just sell him, get Phillips in. That gives me plenty of money in the bank, and then I can clearly just do Reed to Lingard. Even if Lingard's price goes up an extra 0.4, I will still be able to do that move. So probably a -4 next week for me, but with Lingard playing so well, as I mentioned last video, he's just got, his stats are off the charts for his price. And he plays Newcastle next week. And Phillips, who do Liverpool play next week? They play Leeds, so I could start both of them next week. I think that would be kind of beneficial given Man City's rotation and the fact that Reed is, he's just a bench player anyway. So basically shifting that money from defense to midfield. Phillips can turn into a bench player because he's that price, but he's also playable. So Phillips and Lingard, probably 2 great value options at the moment, and they will be in the team soon enough, unless something crazy happens. Now, the third defense I want to talk about, and by the way, I think like if you really want to be risky, you would go like Phillips and Kabak maybe, but Phillips and Trent would be like the way to go for the high upside play if you're looking to make a late run at the end of the season. And the third defense I want to talk about is Arsenal. Now, they have been a little bit leaky as of late. They've impressed me at points in the season where I'm like, okay, this team knows how to defend, but they sort of always are able to lose that form. With that said, if you look at like the total number of goals conceded over the course of the season, it's actually pretty impressive, but they just don't keep a lot of clean sheets. So let's look at Arsenal's fixtures here. Let's go to Gabriel. David Luiz is now out, so I would expect Holding to be the safest pick, but you could go Holding and Gabriel. There's Mari as well, Bellerin, but a lot of these guys are rotation risks, so I'm not sure if the double up here is the safest bet. I think the likes of Cody and Semedo and the Liverpool guys that I mentioned are a little bit safer, but looking at these fixtures, they play Sheffield United, Fulham, then Everton. That's kind of tough. Everton haven't been amazing though, right? And then Newcastle, West Brom, then Chelsea, obviously tough, but then Crystal Palace, Brighton. So it's not one great run of fixtures, but there's just 2 bad fixtures sprinkled in there. So these guys could be some big scores over the course of this next this end of the season. So if we see them defend well against Sheffield United and Fulham, then maybe plan to bring them in against Newcastle and West Brom if you're not jumping on them now. I think if you're wildcarding now, you probably want 1 Arsenal defender. I may actually go 1 Arsenal, 2 Wolves, and 2 Liverpool. As long as that rotates well, I haven't done the math on that, but as long as they rotate well and don't have any bad fixtures, I think I would go all out with a 3-team defense, and I think you would probably have it covered as long as the Wolves fixtures at the end of the season wouldn't hurt you too much. But I quite like the look of these 3 defenses longer term, so maybe a time for some defensive transfers. I know they're not always the highest upside moves, but that's kind of what I'm interested in at the moment. Now, one common move I feel like a lot of people will do this week is Gundogan to Lingard. And this is sort of the move I was going to do initially. I was like, Gundogan's kind of not in form as far as FPL points goes. Obviously, Lingard's been great, and I love him as an FPL option. But really, Gundogan's not doing that bad other than the fact that he hasn't played. And I'm just going to take the risk that he starts this week. I think, he hasn't played the last 2. He should be able to play this one after playing in the Champions League. I'm not entirely sure whether we'll see it or not, but I'm going to take the risk. Considering the fact that all these players were benched in the last league game, I'm going to take the chance and say that all of them start again this week. It's never 100% certain. I would probably say that Stones and Gundogan had the best chance. I'm not too confident in Cancelo, but we'll see what happens. And I think keeping Gundogan this week, it's Leeds. It's a good fixture, so I'm not too keen on selling him this week, but long term, it is a sell. I think if I was wildcarding, There are probably better options out there, but I think I'm going to keep Gundogan for another week. It's Man City's attack. Let's not forget that. And anybody in their attack can have a good week. And obviously, Gundogan has been great this season. Calvert-Lewin may go at some point, but good fixtures, so I'm holding him for now. There's probably higher up priorities than that. And maybe with Semedo in, I'm able to sort of keep Bamford on the bench through his tough fixtures. But we'll see what happens there. As I said, me turning Reed into an actual usable player will allow me one extra usable player, obviously. So then I can bench Mr. Patrick Bamford. So yeah, those are my plans for my team at the moment and my general thoughts on defenders. I think there's a lot of ways to go with this. And as far as the attackers go, I think we sort of established the great attackers. Like, there's not much that's changed. You know, there's Lingard and there's the big guys of Salah, Son, Fernandez. And as far as like the outside differential option goes, I think if you're going to go there, you want to take it in the you want to go the risky defense route instead of like taking risk in the midfield at the moment, because those guys are kind of stable, and there's not stable defenders yet, but I think there will be over the next couple of weeks. So those are my general thoughts on things. I won't be able to do a deadline stream, unfortunately. I will be working at the time, so kind of sucks. I'll barely miss it. But with that said, have a good game week, guys. Remember that next game week 32, there is a double for Southampton and Spurs. So try not to sell those players, even if they're not the best. As long as they start, they could be decent options next week. I don't know if I'm going to go for any of them personally. Maybe I'll throw a Spurs player in there. But I've already got a -4 plan, so we'll see what happens. With that said, I will see you guys next time. Have a good game week. Just not as good as mine, of course.